This video will be highlighting my 500 fights in free-to-play. I will be reviewing the data I've collected from the fight outcomes and reflecting on the lessons that I've learned along the way. So to start, we will be crunching some numbers. At the most basic level, a fight in RuneScape ends in 3 ways: winning by defeating your opponent, losing by death, or a player running.
Run.
With these outcomes becoming the basic metrics that I tracked. I will point out that there are subcategories to these metrics, but we will be addressing those later in the video. And my 500 fight outcomes could be broken down as follows: 149 kills, 223 deaths, and 128 fights ending in a player running, myself accounting for 21 of those 128 runs. I have been very focused on progression, and I've gotten quite caught up on my kill to death ratio, as I see this as my gauge to measure progress. And to evaluate my KD ratio, I've broken my 500 fights into brackets of 100. I will be displaying the data breakdowns on the screen. As you can see from my KD ratio, progress has been made, marginally at times, and at times even regressing. So I have been a casual scaper over the past year, and in respect to this, my greatest lesson does come into play here. I have touched on this in most videos, and that is consistency. As I don't know anyone who has refined a skill without being consistent. And I am not proud to admit, but these 500 fights have taken place over a 10-month period, with long breaks and short sprints of PKing. And that's been okay. Maybe when trying to learn something new, it's even part of the process. But I'm at a point where if I do want to get good at this, PKing consistently will need to become a priority. Now I have an idea of what this consistency can look like, but first we'll walk my talk and come back to it in a future video. Other metrics that I have tracked include gameplay time and money spent on the account. Now free-to-play fights are relatively quick in nature, and my total gameplay over the 500 fight period was roughly 38 hours. As well, I have been using money from my main account to fuel the pier. The learning experience to date has cost me 8.4 mil on gear and supplies, and an additional luxury 5 mil to move my death spawn to Edgeville. Now this was done to speed up the gearing process after death. In one of my previous videos, I do touch on further time and money spent trying to better optimize my account. This was done training via pay-to-play methods. Now there are 2 ways to build a free-to-play pier, traditionally via free-to-play, or optimally via pay-to-play. And I've mentioned my current pier is in a gray area of being suboptimal. But note, if you are curious on the time and money it would take to make a respected free-to-play pier from scratch, note that I am currently working on training one solely via free-to-play and another solely via pay-to-play, as much requested video guides, and to provide an accurate account of the process. So those videos will be focused on stats, and the remainder of this video, I will be reviewing 3 major reflections for my 500 fights to date. I will be referring to these as my Gilded rules, and we will begin with increasing victory. You see, in PKing, you go for the big hits. And in free-to-play, you get those big hits by stacking your range and melee attack damage. This is also the most effective way to defeat your opponent. And at the beginning of my journey, I had some assumptions. In these fights, my goal is to stack my opponent out, so I'm mainly watching my experience drops, my health, and my opponent's health. The goal is to time a large, long-range experience attack, then quickly switching into my 2-hand and get a damage stack, hopefully getting a KO. I also made mention of these PK concepts I had heard of, but never explored. And the account also has the potential to develop a variety of PvP skills, such as sliding, stacking, and delaying. And in my exploration, I learned you can perform something known as a delay. This is done by delaying when you perform your next game attack to the last game tick, making it become seamless. This also becomes the optimal form of stacking damage, as you create the least amount of game time for your opponent to react and eat. Furthermore, there are 7 tiles where this movement can be performed. A side note though is that this tile range can be extended, but we're still exploring that. You can further build on the concept known as the delay and increase your arsenal of attacks. I've only learned the extension known as the backstep, but it's been a skill that has greatly increased my PK potential. And if your interest is piqued and you would like to learn these concepts in depth, I do explain my learning process in full in my 10 hours of PK practice video. Now the competitor in me has enjoyed seeing that there is greater depth to increasing my chances of victory, and I will continue to explore and share what I learn as we are very much still at the surface. The second Gilded rule is simple survival. An area I do need to work on, and my kill to death ratio can attest to that. And in reflecting, I would say many of my deaths could have been avoided, and they are a cause of my bad eating behavior. This being a byproduct of my misconception of safing. Now safing is when you always keep your hit points above your opponent's max hit, leaving no outcome for defeat in a fight, as there is this mutual understanding that you and your opponent will need to risk your hit points at times for there to be a victor. Myself, I would only eat if my hit points fell below my opponent's max melee hit. But in a fight where I am equally trying to stack out my opponent, I am merely baiting and waiting death. Because myself and opponent's max damage hit is not a singular attack, but our combined stack damage, and I am addressing that I need to unlearn this bad habit of mine, and to begin eating when my health falls into the stack damage margin. Another simple thing I have begun implementing is pulling my food closer to my two-hand, creating a better reaction position to go for a two-hand stack or to eat. A small thing that's gone a long way. It was definitely an oversight, but someone watching the videos did point this out to me. I also know that I have yet to bring combo food with me, something to explore and possibly implement. Now this brings us to the final rule. More money, more problems. This is a more subjective point, and it comes from a conversation I had with a viewer who came and spectated my fights to provide tips. He was surprised and asked why I would take the fights that I did, as he noticed I didn't care if someone safed, and I would unspokenly deathmatch at times. Now I was of the thought that a fight's a fight, and I'm out here for the experience. He shared though, being strictly free to play and PKing being his moneymaker, that he's much more particular about the fights he takes, as gear and supplies cost money, and he doesn't come to the wilderness to waste it. And as I've been reflecting and working on this video, I would admit, I don't have an element of scarcity encouraging my PK performance. For me, it's just been fun money from my main. However, my peers from scratch will have much more at stake, and it will be interesting to see if this does have any effect. As this video does come to a close, know that there are additional lessons learned that I did not share, but they can be found in each video of my Learning to PK series. That being said, I will see you next time.